Hey, I'm going to tell you something about Chapter 2 from Digging Deeper about Egypt. So, let's take a look quickly. Egypt. Well, still speaks to the imagination every day. The mummies, the temples, the pyramids, the Sphinx, the beautiful golden mask of Tutankhamun. So, the main question that we are going to answer here is, what made Egypt so successful? Well, actually, the answer is quite simple. It has everything to do with the River Nile. No Nile, no Egypt. So, if you take a look at the map, you can see that the River Nile flows all the way from the south to the north to the Mediterranean Sea. And you can see that most of Egypt is actually desert. It's dry all year, it hardly ever rains. But only the small part around the river is green. That's the fertile area. Now, what's so special about this River Nile is that it annually flooded. Well, it still does. So, let's take a look at this. This is spring in Egypt. You can see some farmhouses. They're in the desert, and there's the River Nile. The water level is quite normal. It's spring. But take a look at this. In summer, due to flooding and heavy rainfall in Central Africa, a lot of water is pushed north through the River Nile. It's actually more water than the Nile can carry, so we get a flooding. You might think that the farmers are very unhappy with it, that their land is flooded with water, but actually they're quite happy with it, because after a couple of weeks the water level drops again and leaves behind on the soil some fertile mud. And that is what makes the banks of the River Nile so fertile. You see, that's the place where they can grow their crops. It makes very good farming. So, in short, you can see it again. In summer, we see the flooding of the Nile. In autumn, the farmers start planting because the river level has dropped again. Of course, in winter, all the young crops need a lot of water to grow. And then in spring, just before the new flooding starts, all the crops are harvested. And this overview is also quite nice. A, B, C and D shows how the farming is being done. And there's also a few ways that you can see how they irrigated the land. Irrigation is how you water the land when there's no rain. Without any water, the crops couldn't grow, of course. And first of all, they dug these canals. In number 1 you can see it. The canals would bring the water to all the fields further away from the River Nile. And then they built these sluices. Sluices keep the water from flowing back into the River Nile. And number 3 is a kind of an invention called a shadoof, which is a very useful way to bring a bucket of water and bring it to the crops. Now, this painting, a very old painting from Egypt, shows you how happy the Egyptians were with the River Nile. They even called Egypt a gift from the Nile. Everything they owed to the Nile. Not only did the Nile give them drinking water and farmland, but also fish in the river to eat. The fish and the water attracted water birds, and they can also be eaten. And besides, well, the River Nile is one big highway for boats, the best means to transport yourself from north to south of Egypt. So, in this picture we see a happy Egypt. There is plenty of food. Actually, there is a surplus of food. Now wait a second, a surplus. Haven't we talked about this before? Yeah, in chapter 1. So, well, I don't need to go back into that. We already talked about this. The surplus is the trigger for which civilizations can grow. We talked about that in chapter 1. And that is why Egypt could become so successful.